Welcome to Chopping It Up, a podcast powered by Journey, where we talk about freight, how people got to where they are, and their career journeys, pun intended. All right, let's chop it up. All right, today on Chopping It Up, we have Liz Wayne, founder and CEO of Able Transport Solutions. Liz, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Will. Great to meet you finally, and thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course. I've had the pleasure to get to know you a little bit through LinkedIn, which is really cool, and I actually had the chance to meet your son in person, Tyler, who I immediately bonded with because of our backgrounds selling Cutco.
Yeah, I saw you on with Dooner on Friday. I think you guys have probably even more in common than we realized, so I appreciate you doing that. He had great feedback. He was so excited to meet you. It was the best.
He's awesome. You have quite the rock star. So I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better because your son's a fantastic reflection of you.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay. So we always do a fun questionnaire before we get started on the Chopping It Up podcast. And I want you to tell us a little bit about your fun fact because I was like, that's kind of cool.
My fun fact is I have 27 children. Not actually, but that's my number for everything when it feels excessive. So
yes,
I have 27 things to do or whatever. So actually his, hers, and ours, we have 6, 3 adults and then 3 still in elementary school. So there was a time a couple of years ago, I had 1 in college and 1 in preschool.
That's a wide range.
It is. So I told you, it's hard to plan family vacations because you've got the little ones who they've been up going hard all day, so they're tired. But then the big ones want DD'd to and from the bar because they're just getting going for the day. And, we're just kind of stuck in the middle, like, okay.
That's so funny. I mean, I bet they are fun, but probably quite hectic to kind of cater to everyone.
Yes, it is, for sure. We're going to have to start making 2 family vacations a year, like 1 with the big kids, 1 with the littles.
Totally. Well, they'll be fun either way. I look forward to hearing about them between all the madness with all 6 of them. But it'll be a good time. So we normally like to start with your background. I'm slightly familiar just based on what I've seen on LinkedIn and getting to know you a little bit. But would you mind just maybe telling us a little bit about early years, education, stuff like that? Kind of how you got started as a young entrepreneur or before your entrepreneurial days.
Yeah, I'd love to. So grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I was actually raised by my grandparents, went to private Catholic elementary and high school. So my introduction into logistics, let me tell you. So I was registered for the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. So I was going to be a Husker. I was super excited about that. I graduated in the spring of 2001, excuse me. So about 6 weeks before graduation, I found out I was pregnant with Tyler. So I kind of felt like my college dreams were shot at that point. Didn't really know what to do. Had to figure it out. And a lot of people ask, how did you get into logistics? And I always say by accident, like everybody else, now there's supply chain degrees, but back in the day, we just ended up by accident and totally falling in love with the space and all of that. And so that is part of the answer. But the other part is the hours, which I bet you've never heard somebody got into logistics for the hours.
No.
Because usually the memes are about how we work 24/7 and all of that. So I had been waiting tables in high school, which was awesome because I made a ton of tip money. I think minimum wage at that point was $4.25. But I'd work a double on Saturday and have like $400 cash. So I just, loved it. But then once Tyler came, there was no way to have daycare and childcare. And so all of the childcare in the area was like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And so I needed kind of a day job, an office job. And so I went looking for that and came across a job at a trucking company here in Omaha. They had about 300 or 400 trucks at the time. And they hired me as their receptionist, which I was jacked. I was excited. I had like a big girl job. I'm still 18 at this point. And then it's funny because I get there on my first day and they have an automated phone system. And like everybody calling knows where they're going and who they want. So it only rang when people would push 0, which was next to never. And so I was super bored. One time I think I might have dozed off, kind of one of these, because there was just nothing to do. And so I joke that I learned 75% of everything I know simply in an attempt to stay awake in those. I mean, because I had an infant at home, he wasn't sleeping at night. And I just didn't have enough responsibility in that receptionist job. Meanwhile, everybody around me is running around like a chicken with their head cut off. They all have way too much to do. So I just started sort of asking people, could I help with this? Could I help with that? And all of a sudden I started learning things. And so it started as random projects, put all these lumper receipts in the system, or there'd be a daily balance meeting where they'd all get together with the driver managers and the planners and try to figure out what everybody needs. And I got to kind of start organizing that. And through that process, I learned a lot about how things actually work,
Right.
So I was fortunate enough at that company they kept me busy. You know how it is. If you put your hand up to volunteer for something in this space, it's like they'll pile it on. So with that, I had, maybe 5 or 6 promotions, got to do like 5 or 6 different jobs over there. The last one being a broker,
Nice.
which was cool. I would say, though, that
do you mind if I
at
ask?
that company, they were definitely...
I was going to ask the time frame between coming in as a receptionist and then getting the promotion to being a broker. How long was that?
So that was probably about 4 years.
Nice.
And in those 4 years, did a number of different positions. So made about 3 stops through the accounting department. And at this time, I was going to school at night taking business classes. And so I never was able to... I skipped the gen eds because I'm like, I know that stuff. I'm not taking chemistry again. I'm not doing any of that. I need to know accounting. I need to know marketing. And so at that time I was doing that. And it kind of like every time I learned something at school, I'd come and tell them about it and try something new at work. And so it was kind of a combination of doing both of those things for about 4 years. And then I was with that company for a total of 5 years. And I got an opportunity to join a startup, and I was there on day one, hiding from the fire marshal because we didn't have our occupancy permit yet, but we were moving a couple loads in there, which was cool. But that founder had come from C.H. Robinson, and he had been part of like the acquisition team when they went into American Backhaul in '99. And so just a completely different kind of mindset, culture that we created there at that office, because the first company was really asset based, and the brokerage was a value add and a very small piece of their overall business. So then going and helping him build his brokerage and not having any assets, that was a new sell too, because they don't ask so much anymore. But, the number one question used to be, how many trucks do you have? And when you say 0, it's like, well, what are you really doing then?
Wow.
So that was fun.
They still ask, and it's still definitely a challenging one. Yeah. Question for you. So when you were at the original company that had 300 to 400 trucks, and you transitioned to be a broker, did you make a stop at any like dispatching roles or anything, or did you just get an opportunity to start selling the services and going to find customers and stuff like that?
There were some sort of dispatching type roles in that brokerage division. So yeah, I did a lot of that. I didn't do any dispatching, planning, or driver managing on the truck line side. But I learned a lot of it just through osmosis, and being on the floor, really.
Totally. See, the reason I ask is I think some of the coolest stories I've heard come from, like non-traditional routes, even inside of a brokerage, to eventually become an owner or running your own business and whatnot. And I think being able to just soak in information and just roll with it as you need to is one of the best ways to kind of equip yourself. So it's cool that you did some accounting, you were a receptionist, do these other things, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to go sell these services.
Yeah. And I feel fortunate to have had the opportunity to work early on, both with assets and then really just the pure brokerage, because I think that's experience that not a lot of people get. There's a lot of people out here that are really either one way or the other, and that's how they were brought up. And I think that contributes to some of the contentiousness out here. I just think that the more everybody understands each other, the better everything goes. And I think I was blessed early in my career while I was still soaking it all in and while I was still a sponge to just be exposed to enough of the truck line issues and then the brokerage 3PL world.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so startup world, leave the asset company, get a chance to, get in at the ground level. Talk to us about that because I know from experience it is crazy and hectic, but it's really cool to hear what it's like the first couple years.
Yeah, it's fun. It was fun there. It was fun here. Those are the days. I think when I look back in my career as at the times that were the most satisfying and fun, those will certainly be some of them. I was lucky enough, my boss there, he wasn't from the Omaha area. He had been recruited by a company in Omaha. And so he went there to wait out his non-compete with CH. And so he didn't know a lot of people in the area. I worked really hard and I was really smart. I did a good job for him. And so he gave me a lot of autonomy and I was able to hire some of my friends and train people up, and we were having fun for sure.
That's awesome. So what was your role at that company or the different roles that you had at the startup?
I mean, everything. He didn't care much about titles. He's like, call yourself whatever you want. But everything. I mean, literally, I wore every single hat. I was his right hand.
I think that's huge. Sometimes it can be a little scary to jump into the unknown and go into an organization that maybe doesn't have the structure, but from personal experience, getting thrown into the fire and having to learn all the different aspects of the business, it equips you for your next step or to rise within an organization, because it's good to know a little bit of what is going on, just to have enough information to understand all the different departments. So I'm sure that probably helped into your current venture and whatever you did in between the startup and starting your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of being a jack of all trades helped me immensely. And now I'm at the place in my business where I don't need or want to be the best here at any one particular thing. My goal is just to know enough about everything that I can kind of from a higher level put those pieces together and understand how each is going to affect the other. But I definitely don't want to be the best at any one topic. If I'm too much of an expert at one thing, I might be kind of failing in other areas. I might not be wearing all the hats in the right way.
Totally. So let's talk about the next step after the startup. Was that where Able came into, or were there any other stops before you started Able?
Yeah, so that was 10 years ago this month.
Congrats.
Decided to go out on my own. I worked on my own as an agent for another company for about a year or so before I started hiring employees and formally established Able.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what made you want to do that? That's quite the leap to go out and start your own business.
So I've always been an entrepreneur. I mean, I've always had that kind of just sort of like, I want to eat what I kill type of mentality. And just like I said, waiting tables at 15 years old. I mean, I was like, this is it, And so yeah. I've always had part of that. I think I had realized the time had come. I mean, I'm a very growth oriented person, and I don't know that personally, like I was going to develop any further without sort of taking more control of that myself. Able's mission is to reinvent the freight broker's reputation. I think there's room in the industry for an increased level of professionalism, kind of among other things. And so I just wanted to get out and make my place in my little corner the way I wanted it, to be quite honest.
Totally. I think that drives a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself to go and build something. You've got this desire to go eat what you kill, what you said. And sometimes it could be tough to be inside of an organization and producing and not seeing the benefit or all of the benefit of what you're able to produce. And also say, I think I can do this, right? Like, I think there's something to, the way that you go and approach that business. And obviously it's been fruitful for you. But there's a lot of people that are thinking that today going, gosh, could I go do this? And the answer is you can. It's going to be hard, but there's certainly enough room and enough space to go out there and do that.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk high level Able, just information for people that may not be familiar. So you've been around for 10 plus years. Just tell us a little bit, 30,000 foot view of what Able Transport Solutions is, and some of the stuff that you all service from a freight brokerage perspective.
Yeah, so 100% brokerage, no assets. We specialize in flatbed, heavy haul freight. So we've focused on the construction industry, do a lot of project logistics type work. That's probably the most fun we have, is taking something, really big and obnoxious and being able to break it down into palatable bites for our customer and then ultimately get it done and chew through it all for them. We, like I said, we're on a mission to reinvent the freight broker's reputation. So, like, one of the things I think that makes us, I guess, part of our kind of why I enjoy it so much, and one of the things I'm most proud of here is, I call it like our dad joke culture. And, it's just a really clean, fun place to be. Like, there's a few people that have dad joke calendars, for the daily giggles, and we love some good puns. Like, if people can volley a good pun back and forth 4 or 5 times, I mean, that really gets everybody going. And so I'm proud of that, especially the industry we work in and the market we've targeted. I am proud of the level of professionalism that we've built in and, of course, of the services we provide.
That's awesome. Well, it's really cool to hear a little bit about, the environment that you've built, the team that you have. I also am partial to a good dad joke. So I love that. That's a little bit of what the environment is. I would love to understand maybe a key turning point for you in the early days as you were building Able. And the reason I ask is the early first couple of years are never easy. So let's go back to that. Maybe some of the first couple of years and what maybe got you going to say, we can do this thing like this, this thing's working.
Yeah. So, first while's a grind. Let's see. So left my position February of 14. So my first kind of ideal dream customer, I'd say I started calling on them in 2014 at some point, and then it's 2015 and I had gotten busy enough. I formed Able and I had hired maybe like 2 employees at this point. And so I'm still working this customer. You know how some of the best sales are long sales. So then one day, somebody walks in my office. I had this little 400 square foot office in downtown Fort Calhoun, a small town outside of Omaha that I live in. And they walk in with their dog and they're like, "Oh, you're new to town." I'm like, "Yeah, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, look, here's a photo album. We move cool loads, like some big stuff. It's pretty sweet. Check it out." Well, I think it's just a neighbor, It turns out it is a neighbor, but he's also over like a, $70 or $80 million flatbed heavy haul freight spend.
No way.
And I didn't even know I was pitching. I was just showing some cool pictures to the neighbor, And so we were able to start working with his company, which was great. And it was kind of one of those moments in the early days where it's like, whoa, we're going to need some more help. And then wouldn't you know, less than 24 hours later, that customer I've been working for a year, hits as well. And so I'll never forget that week. That was a really, really special week in our history where it's like, whoa, we went from, okay, how are we going to keep these 2 people busy to, we need like 6 more people. And that's when it's really, really fun.
That's so cool because those are the stories that you remember when things are tough and challenging. And to be at the position to say, we're just going to figure this out. I'm going to keep calling all these opportunities. Some stuff happens and timing is good. You happen to say the right thing to the right person that walks into the office and that materializes to a customer. But the confidence that you get from selling to that other customer for a year before they convert, that's just a really good lesson about, persistence as you're selling to opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're in 2015 now. You've got 2 people. You land those 2 accounts. You add a couple more people. What's headcount and size of the business look like 2015?
Oh gosh, good question. Let's see. We ended 2015 probably with about 5 or 6 folks. And we were probably nearing that like 5 million point, I would guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so roll into 2016. Um, any fun, crazy, either good or bad things that stick out? Let's call it 2016 through the pandemic, because
Gosh,
that'll
I'm
that'll be
like, a lot of this becomes a blur,
doesn't it?
especially once you get to 2020. It's hard to
Yeah,
believe that was 4 years ago. We're 4 years post um, the initial COVID lockdown and things.
yeah.
So it does get to be a blur. Let's see. Quite honestly, we didn't really start selling until after COVID.
Okay,
Um, and I'm very operationally minded, and I was definitely during those, say, 15 through 19, striving for operational excellence and perfection. And
sure.
I still do that, but I'm a little more reasonable now in my management, I'd say.
Yeah,
But I spent a lot of time trying to create, just something perfect operationally during those years. And then COVID, that was tough. Obviously, a lot of our industry is never going to look the same post COVID. I mean, I feel like the last 4 years has been a lot of just trying to keep up with how things are changing and making predictions for the future and where do we go from here. And I think it's just now starting to show itself.
totally,
Um,
totally. It's been an
yeah, it's been a
interesting.
blur.
I can't believe it's been 4 years since COVID first started, and the complexities of our space and how we do work, where people work, the types of business you go after, things like that, sales cycles, all very different, just, as a result of the pandemic. But you mentioned not selling a ton, being operationally sound prior to that, and then maybe adjusting some of that during the pandemic. Was that something that you took on yourself? Did you bring on a team or someone that was focused on sales or new business acquisition to start to spur that growth?
Yeah, formed a sales team finally in 2020. I was going to say 2019, but it was probably 2020.
Got it.
So then from there, expanded the customer base, expanded offerings a little bit. I mean, we're like everybody else. We can do everything, right? Isn't that what the brokers say? We can do
What?
everything
What we say?
anywhere
Yeah.
for anybody. But we're really, really good at the flatbed heavy haul. So that really is still our focus and still our niche and what we try to sell.
Okay. Awesome. So I think building the business and then, making sure it's viable, making sure that you're executing for the customers you have, um, is inherently different than kind of pouring gasoline on the fire with the sales team and saying, okay, let's go do this thing. So what did you learn as you started to build that team out, and they onboarded, new opportunities, maybe some good, maybe some bad? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, it's interesting. Motivating salespeople is interesting.
Yes.
And trying to keep them motivated for the type of business you want and incentivizing around the kind of business you want, because salespeople sometimes will want any business that will pay their commission.
Yep.
And so, but then whether it's sales or operationally, I mean, a big thing for me is further scale sort of requires me to be less of a control freak, both on the
Yeah,
sales side and the operation side, But as a founder and an entrepreneur, you have this vision and you want things your way, to be quite honest. And for a long time, they can be. And so when you lose some of that, it presents a new challenge.
totally. I
So
think,
building a sales team, that's been part of that for me.
yeah, it certainly is tough when you think about, hey, here's how Liz does it. Here's how Will does it, right? It's what I want to see done. And then you get other people and they might be as effective, but they have a different approach. And so to scale, you have to put in processes that allow people the autonomy to go and execute, but they're not so rigid that they stop people's creativity as long as they're effective and getting to the end result. But that is I mean, I've had to grow in that process too and not be too, cut and dry. If you get the results, you get the results, right? We might get there a different way.
Yeah. And authenticity sells. So who am I to say you should do it my way if that's not you, because you doing it your way is probably better than you trying to do it my way. So I think then it just becomes making sure you have the right people on the bus who are going to live by your core values. And that's, if you're actually honoring those every day in your business, they become kind of the guardrails and keep everybody on track.
They definitely do. They definitely do. So COVID was certainly challenging for everyone. And you talked about building the business up and then continuing to add people on the sales side to grow it. Any distinct challenges that happen, and this can be at any point during the last 10 years of building your business, where you thought, man, that was really, really hard. We got to figure out a way to work through this, and maybe some lessons that those taught you.
Oh man, I mean, challenges are always there, right? I'm part of a
Yep.
CEO group. My coach calls me Miss Resilient. I've got
Oh,
stronger than usual resiliency bone, but no, definitely I have. I mean, through that agency program, and it wasn't really a program I was going to 10 years ago, be an agent for, Trinity or whomever. I was talking to a few folks, and instead I called a friend here in Omaha and, well, hey, I would rather, if I'm going to give 25% of all of this to somebody until I can afford my bond and MC, I'd rather it be you than them. That went terribly wrong a couple of years later.
really?
And so there's always challenges. But I would say that sort of failed partnership was the biggest I've gone through at this point to date. Working on kind of a reorganization right now, and strategically, this is the most challenging thing I've taken on. There's different models out here and different, you got the pod and the split and the Chicago and the cradle to grave and I think when we started, I called it the able assembly line, but I took what I loved of everything and put it together, and it worked really well in the beginning. But it needs revamped. It's been time. It's needed revamped for some years now. But there was just too much to do to really prioritize it. But I've
Totally.
been able to prioritize it here during this down market. And so I would say this is probably the second most challenging thing I've done. And I'll be excited to be past it and settled into it.
Totally. The organizational wide changes are always really challenging. They are quite the lift. Getting buy-in from everyone is challenging, and also working through the pain of change. But once you're through that and you've got everybody moving in the same direction, and you see how much more efficient you can be based on putting everyone in the right group or in the right position with the right responsibilities. But it's not easy by any means.
It's not. So that's where we're at, and it will be worth it. It's one of those things, it's
Oh, yeah.
like growth is pain. And so definitely there is some really good stuff on the other side of this, but it is challenging for sure.
How many people do you have nowadays?
Currently 25.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really cool to think from 2014, 2015 with two people to now having a team of 25, building around the base that you built is admirable. It's really cool to see.
Thank you.
Question around role models or influences. So mine personally are my parents. Like they have done so much for me to kind of get to where I am, and they're by far my favorite people. Do you have any role models or influences that kind of shaped who you are?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my mom was probably the hardest worker I've ever known. So I think I got work ethic from her. Um, in my career, I mean, I was just blessed with so many smart people. That I was able to learn from. That trucking company, they were, like third generation family business, and um which means they were open with each other uh and with us, and we got to learn, so much in such a short amount of time from them. But all the way to, I mean, right now I'm learning from my son, which is
Yeah.
crazy. I never in a million years thought my kid would be a role model for me, but um, I take inspiration from everywhere, and I can definitely find something in almost everybody I meet that I can strive towards. And so, really, I mean, I think I have hundreds of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there are just so many lessons from every person that you encounter. And if you can draw something from that and, kind of make it your own and use that as motivation or a point of reference, it's valuable. And there's just so much to learn. You're going to meet someone every day that knows something more than you do about their particular, expertise or something that they're proficient at. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
What about advice for anyone that might be, maybe they are trying to figure out if they want to go build a business or they're in a career today, and they're just figuring out what's next? Any advice for younger professionals that are trying to figure out what they want to go do?
I would say just go for it. Don't wait until you meet every qualification for a position, or get yourself 70% there and go for it. You'll be surprised.
I love that advice. It gets me fired up because I think that, 70% of a good plan is better than 100% of a perfect plan because we'll never get there. Like it's never going to be perfect.
Yes, perfection is the enemy of progress. And I keep saying about this kind of reorg, like we're getting to 80% and we're going fast. And the 20% will fall as it may, and we will figure it out. Everything is figure outable. But we would sit here for another 5 years going in circles if we strove for 100%. So we're getting 80. We know what that looks like, and we're going to move when we're there.
That might be my favorite soundbite so far from our conversation because I think there are so many people that will listen to this and go, I'll do it when I'm ready. Or, hey, I'll call that customer when I feel prepared, or, I'll make the leap when I feel like, and it's, we might be sitting there another 10 years before you feel prepared. Like you got to go.
Yes.
So that's really cool. We talked a little bit before we got started about your favorite book. Tell me a little bit about that one.
The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. Ancient Toltec wisdom, but I think it's the secret to happiness in there. So for people unfamiliar with the book, the Four Agreements are: do not take anything personally, always do your best, do not make any assumptions, and be impeccable with your word. But if anybody knows of it and is into it, he has a whole collection of books that's great as well.
I love that book. I had the opportunity to listen to it for the first time last year around this time, and it resonated really, really, really strong. It's a heck of a book.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up here, I want to give you an opportunity to highlight a few things that you were telling me about with the Women in Logistics event. So anything coming up that we should be on the lookout for with you and your business?
Yeah, so for TIA, I co-chair the Women in Logistics Committee. So if anybody is a TIA member, we do some cool stuff there. We have a Connecting to Climb series where we profile awesome, successful women and share their stories, and it's so inspiring. I mean, it's an amazing group. So watch for those announcements from TIA and join in on those. Of course, we have lunch at conference, but doing something cool at conference this year too with Brent Hudo and Kevin Rutherford, who used to do Broker Connect. But we have surveyed owner ops and small trucking companies, and we're looking forward to kind of sharing those results with the brokers. And why did owner ops answer this way, and what would brokers' best practice kind of around this topic be? So really looking forward to that. And that'll be in April at Capital Ideas.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you there. I will be at TIA, and I look forward to hearing from those panels and some of the things that you're working on.
Nice. I'll get to meet you in real life.
Yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good. Awesome. So before we wrap up here, just want to make sure that anyone listening can know how to reach you. So any particular social media that they can find you on, or websites, things like that, just to make sure they can reach out if anything here resonated with them.
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best. Otherwise, abletransportsolutions.com.
Beautiful. Liz, thank you so much for joining Chopping It Up, powered by Journey. We really appreciate it. It was really cool to learn about your story, and I appreciate you sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you, Will.
Awesome. I'll catch you later. Thanks.